Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00. This is my Lore and Theories video series, and today we take a closer look at the artwork for Halo Infinite and maybe apply a little context to what took place during the Halo Infinite trailer. So to kick this off straight away, this is the artwork. Chief is looking badass in his new Mjolnir Gen 3 suit, and he is evidently not alone as his AI data port is glowing, indicating that an AI is present in some regard. But what interests me more is not in the foreground, but in the background. You can see the towers we are used to seeing on a Halo installation, firing their beacon pulses into the air. What I find interesting is that one such beacon appears to be on a section that is significantly higher in altitude than the ones closer to Chief. Then, the more you look, the more you see. Suddenly it becomes apparent that Chief is stood at the threshold of this door, which at first glance appears to be the bay door of a pelican, likely belonging to Brohammer, as the community is calling him. But the door seems much too narrow to actually be a pelican, considering how much space was available within the pelican when Brohammer found Chief. To be nearly filling the main doorway seems odd. Truth be told, its shape seems more in line with smaller corridors that we have walked in previous Halo games. I do acknowledge that the floor does appear to look like the deck of the interior of a pelican, so it might just be a forced perspective because they evidently don't want to give away too much. But it still seems a bit too far removed from a pelican, but I digress. But back to the sections in the background. To my eye, I see 7 different sections of the ring which appear to be floating, with evidence much closer to Chief that sections are in the process of being removed, as shown in the bottom left, around Chief's knee height, where you can see a textured sheer metal face leading up to a grassy section. So why is this significant? Well, I think this picture actually happens shortly before the trailer does, and the teaser we saw in 2018 perhaps happens before the artwork. I think 343 have released fragmented information in a kind of narrative to hint to circumstances of Halo Infinite. Let me explain how. As we know, in Halo 5, Cortana takes control of the galaxy and the Infinity flees. Roland asks,
"We're just gonna run?"
Only until we could find a way to fight.
Infinity couldn't have been the only ship to get away from population centres before the Guardians became an issue. We know there is a stronghold of humans and Sangheili on Sanghelios. I'm sure there are other forces scattered about waiting for orders too. At some point between Halo 5 and Halo Infinite, it seems likely that the last resistance against the Created, quite possibly the last combat effective units ready and willing to fight, began coordinating and deciding to set up base of operations on this Halo ring after Halsey perhaps receives an odd signal from the ring, a small section of a song she recognises. Halsey convinces Lasky, and Infinity arrives at the Halo ring and begins setting up. Chief will have arrived some time afterward with the swords of Sanghelios after receiving word that the ring was a safe place, as that was where we left him in Halo 5. As more forces arrive, it is likely Chief is tasked with roundup, which is what we see him doing in the teaser trailer from 2018. Finding survivors of the cataclysm which has rocked the galaxy and bringing them all to the main base of operations, as at this stage they'd need every survivor they could get to mount any kind of retaliation. Chief is given a new or perhaps a recovered version of Cortana in a new chip, as evidenced by the chip with a single order of magnitude larger serial data chip than the Cortana we know and love. By Halsey likely, with the AI containment protocol in effect. Halsey has discovered that perhaps more fragments of Cortana have survived, and one of them is on the ring. It was this fragment which reached out to Infinity in the first place and beckoned Infinity to the ring as a safe place, as is implied in the legendary ending of Halo 5. At some point during this process, the created may find out that the survivors are gathering on a halo and were planning an attack. They will have sent guardians to the halo ring to assess the situation, and the created Cortana will detect and confront another version of herself in the control room.
I chose you because you were special. I knew we would be perfect together. And I was right. This is part of me. I don't know why. I don't know how, but it is me.
Cortana will likely only fear another one of herself, as she knows there are very few entities capable of taking her down, with the exception of another one of her. From this realization, and when it is seen how many survivors are actually on the Halo Ring, a decision will very promptly be made. All Halos have a redundant system allowing sections of the ring to be ejected or purged, so, as we see in Halo Wars 2, the created access the control room and begin ejecting various sections of the Halo Ring that are populated by the survivors, as we see in the artwork, spacing those unlucky enough to be groundside and not wearing gear rated for vacuum. It seems likely that Chief will have been amongst them. He will have had to have bear witness to the sections being ejected from the ring and hitting the cold, hard vacuum of space as the sections fall apart, and watch helplessly as the Marines, fellow soldiers, fellow human beings, even Sangheili, are mercilessly exposed to space, rendering the entire operation space completely destroyed and its survivors asphyxiated to death. Those lucky enough to be in ships would likely have left the system as fast as possible before the Guardians hit the area with their EMP pulse. Chief, now floating in space, gets hit by the pulse and it shorts out his suit, putting it into survival mode, which puts him into a form of stasis where he stays drifting in space. The created Cortana flees the fragment she confronts in the control room, realizing they both think themselves the original and that the new fragment still wishes to protect humanity. Elsewhere, Brohammer's Pelican is left behind by Infinity as she jumps out of the system. The EMP took down his ship's electronics right as he was trying to navigate away from the debris field caused by the fragmented ring. He falls unconscious and comes to shortly after and desperately attempts to stabilise the ship. He manages it, but his ship's main generator is tripped out, leaving it to run on its emergency backup power supply. Days begin to pass, drifting without power in space. After over a week, maybe even more, his ship drifts close enough to Chief for his IFF to be picked up by an emergency subsystem. He pulls Chief aboard, uses his suit to jumpstart both Chief's suit and his own ship with great success. Finally, after being in survival mode and unconscious, Chief is once again confronted with the ring's ejected sections. As we see, the ring is still fully operational, the primary power conduits are glowing, and what appears to be hard-like cross-bracings are in place across the expanse now left from when the sections were ejected, as evidenced by the blue glow. Powering back up the Pelican systems draws the attention of the Guardians, and so begins Chief's fight, and his mission to find more shards of Cortana continues. With little other forces left on the ring, Chief and Brohammer go to the control room. Chief picks up Cortana's shard, and she willingly merges with the new version held within his data chip. And so the primary objective of Halo Infinite begins, which I will cover in my next video. Thanks for watching. Stick your comments down below, I look forward to what you have to say. I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons: Nathan the Silent Cartographer, Miguel, Brian, Sebastian, the Holders of the Mantle, Justin, Darian, Ty and Iron Griffin, my reclaimers, Zach, Deep Cover, Verbal Statue, Spesigo, Charles and Guppy, my Metarchs, and all the other patrons that have jumped aboard to support the channel. I literally cannot put it into words how much this all means to me. It's fantastic, it really is. If you like Halo lore discussed at insane levels of detail, hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon so you're told the second a new video hits the shelves. Be sure to support us on all major social media channels, including Discord, and if you really love the channel, consider heading over to Patreon and supporting the channel over there. It would mean the world to me and would free up more time for me to put into this content and other Halo related goodness. Take it easy everyone. Find peace in the domain.